And my guests today are George Lopez and Celanese Leyva of Lopez versus Lopez. Guys, thanks for stopping by. How are you?
Thank you. Good.
Thank you.
Good.
We're
Good.
good.
All right. So, George, we've heard the whole story of how the show started based on your daughter
Yeah.
and the whole TikTok
Yes.
back and forth. But I've been your daughter all the time. Now I want to hear your side of it. Once you kind of came up with the idea for the show, and what were your thoughts based on that TikTok back and forth and looking at a daughter relationship with a father and kind of reestablishing it.
Neil, that's a great question because like most people that I grew up around, they would just eliminate the relationship. There were people that just are gone to people. I don't want to talk about this. I'm not going to deal with it. My grandmother had family that lived really close by. She never spoke to, and this is the one relationship in my life that was worth me owning up to my mistakes and saving this relationship, but also being able to be forgiven. The things that I went through in my life that were so unexpected in the first show, and personally, I mean, professionally things happen, and a lot of people can handle that. I had never expected anything good to ever happen, so I was able to make up some time with mine, and I can't get back the time that we weren't around each other, but the relationship, thanks to her and everybody being forgiving, it's been really good. It's been great.
And I think George in the show kind of really touches base in that important relationship in telling the story.
Yeah, I think for all people, yeah, Neil, I think for people too, not necessarily us, people in real life that are just, one phone call away, one, hey, can I talk to you, away from getting somebody back into your life. It's not easy, but it's worth it. I'll say that.
Celanese, you see specifically enough the whole process in this relationship too. I'm working on set together and how they're building their relationship, right?
Yes, I do. And I was just thinking what a difference between season one, where they were just kind of rekindling and really kind of getting to know each other, and now they finish each other's sentences. It's really beautiful to see the evolution of this relationship, how it's evolved, and also to see Mayan step into her strength and her talent the way she has. It's been a wonderful journey to watch. And, listen, this is a dream job. I get to work with George. I get to work with Mayan, Bryce, Matt, Al. Like, we have an amazing crew of people, of humans that we get to hold on to for dear life. And it's a little family for sure.
I definitely see that. And, George, when I think about specifically enough, how proud of you are you of your daughter? As a famous comedian that you are, and now you're following your footsteps in so many ways with a comedy.
Yeah, I mean, I started doing stand-up in a house that my grandparents raised me. They didn't know what was going on. I've talked to Mayan, and knew Mayan had dreams like this from the time she was 10 years old, and to see her fulfill her dreams. I'm more excited about her being able to do this than I was when I started to go through it. That says a lot.
I mean, it absolutely does. It's a dream as a parent for someone to follow in someone's footsteps, and
Yeah,
so
and to be a nice person and to be a good person too. Sandra Bullock was very, very helpful to me in the beginning of my career. And one of the things that she said to someone else that was interviewed is that she didn't create a monster when she gave me an opportunity. And I feel like mine is going to be able to do this and help so many other people fulfill aspirations that they may have as well.
So let's talk about specifically enough what to expect this season. People need to catch up first and kind of stream first, all of it.
Well, yes, if you want to catch up, yes, definitely stream season 2 on Netflix right now before we premiere with season 3 on October 18th on NBC. We are planning a wedding. Mayan and Quentin, where we left off, they got engaged at the end of season 2. And George and Rosie have, other plans. They want to create their version of the wedding. George wants to create the cheapest version of the wedding, and Rosie wants the most elaborate. So we're going to see how how these two people are going to insert themselves in. And then we have another wonderful episode with Rita Moreno, Dia de los Muertos. We're celebrating Halloween in a very special way with visitors from the other side. So this is definitely a season full of sobriety, family fun, visits from ghosts, and everything in between, and lots of corn.
Like a regular Saturday.
Like a regular Saturday.
Like a regular Saturday.
And it's George, it's great to see a show like this back on again, right? You've recreated
thank
it
you.
one
Yeah,
more
it's-
time. Mhm.
It's got a lot of the elements that some of our favorite sitcoms have.
Absolutely. Definitely. Everyone needs to catch up to season 3 of Lopez versus Lopez, premiering Friday, October 18th, 8:30 on NBC, and catch up on the Peacock app. George, anything else to say to your fans before I let you go?
You know, I appreciate the support through all the years, and I love you, everybody. Thank you.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks again.
Our first year of growing in this 60 by 60 plot of land, we grew 2,500 pounds of produce. And this past year, we were able to harvest, with the assistance of all of our community partners, we harvested 18,000 pounds of produce. And that produce went directly to each of our 3 food pantries throughout the summer. I've got a dedicated group of volunteers that are out here in the rain. They're also out here in the summer heat when it's 95 degrees. But gardening is a multi-weather activity. I was able to join this group at Shim and further my love of gardening and help people at the same time. There's nothing like being able to hand somebody a fresh piece of produce that was picked from the garden within minutes of harvesting.
This is going to be a really interesting, intriguing guest we have today, Jack Griffith, and he is from Novo Combo, right? Is that correct?
Yes, Novo
And-
Combo.
And I wanted to first of all know how the heck you got that name, Novo Combo.
Well, it's a funny story. Michael was into Nuvo, and Stephen was into Combo. And so they were trying to think of names, and I said, well, just call it Novo Combo. Nah. But Michael wrote it in his book anyway. So we tried to name ourselves Soldier. So when we did interstate rights, we couldn't use Soldier. And so Michael came in one day. I got this name I wrote that I thought of that I wrote in my book. It's called Novo Combo. So we became Novo Combo.
So how, like, so interesting. So when did that group develop, and tell some of the process and all that?
That was early 80. I met the band in Miami. It's a funny story there. I answered an ad for a hotel gig to play in a hotel band, and female singer. The ad was rags to riches, and I go do the interview or the audition, and I play, and they go, yeah, you're pretty good, you know. And it was a big mafioso guy going, you give the girl whatever she wants, you know. So I played all those songs, the old R&B stuff, you know. And anyway, so they said, all right, well, we'll be giving you a call. So that evening, I got a call from Stephen Dees, and he said, hey, man, John thinks you're pretty good. Won't you come down and jam with us tomorrow? It was sort of a front for Michael and Stephen to have their auditions. And so, yeah, so I went back down, and we jammed for like 4 days in a row. And then it's kind of like Michael's story. He said, well, do you want to be in the band? I'm like, duh, yeah, let's go, you know. 2 days later, I was
it's
in
an
Manhattan.
80s band. So kind of tell this genre of music, and what song are you guys most known for?
Probably Periscope and E-Train. Stevens had a couple hits. They went top 14 with a bullet. So, it's pretty good. And, the rest is history about all that. Then we didn't last very long. We only were together for a year. And then they did a second album with another guitar player. And then, so then they wanted to get back together with the original band and do a new album. And so that's what we've done.
So, so were any of your stuff played in music? Because you know a lot of the '80s shows had music. Did any of your music ever go on any shows or anything?
Oh yeah, we were on the Super Bowl. Um, lot of stuff. Yeah,
That's cool.
certainly.
And
So just
getting go.
for a little while we were like really on top of things, and then the band broke up. Like we got hit with a lot of smart bombs and it broke us up, and so then we felt like we had unfinished business, so we got back together to do this record.
So tell me what type of music genre, when you're talking '80s, is it the kind of, who do you kind of pattern your music after?
I think it was 80s pop. We were trying to, well, we were evolving in that sound. I think it kind of came out of like jazz fusion, with pop rock songs, just a combination of it. Yeah.
Okay. And so it's a mix of things. And so I should have pulled up your original songs to see if have I heard it, because again, I am an '80s guy. I
Yeah.
mean, born 1973, so I'm 51. And I love '80s music, and it's so crazy when they remake these '80s, when you listen to some of these horror flicks in the '80s and stuff like that, and you go back and you're like, okay, now
Yeah.
that's definite '80s.
Well, we were on MTV like in the first month. Like we came on shortly after a video killed the radio star. Even we were right there on the change.
Really? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So that had been cool seeing yourself on MTV.
Oh yeah, it was great. Yeah. Hearing your hit record on the radio the first time, that's always cool.
And why did the band break up?
Uh, well, there was a lot of reasons. We had bad management, very typical, and just some internal conflicts, and then we had outer people pulling us away. There's just a lot of smart bombs hit us at once, and you know,
Yeah,
music
I
business
understand how
politics,
those things happen.
music business politics. Yeah,
And when that happens, it's tough.
yeah, it was hard to keep it together.
Exactly.
But we knew we were good, and like I said, we always felt like we had unfinished business. So it like took us 30 years, but we still got together and put this record together.
So tell me
It's real
specifically
nice.
enough, after Life After Novo Combo, what you did.
I started a group called Revo Bob. I got signed with Warner Chappell Music, and I toured a bit. We did a long tour with the Fix. I did dates with Amy Mann. I was actually managed by her management company, the Barbera Brothers, and so we did a lot of her dates, and I got the publishing deal, so I had a few songs covered, and it was real nice.
And then after that, did you basically, what else did you do in your career?
Basically got married, had a kid, opened my own studio, was doing commercial business, that sort of thing. Yeah.
What type of commercial business?
Regular TV and radio commercials, soundtrack commercials. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's a big business still, isn't it?
It's good business. Yeah. And with a friend, Randy Brown, Randy helped with the Novo Combo stuff, doing all the early recording. We've opened up a new studio in Charleston, West Virginia, and it's totally nice, totally state-of-the-art digital room.
That's gonna be cool.
Yeah.
And do you guys do any podcasting in there? Because you got that state-of-the-art studio.
We haven't started anything like that yet. We're just still
need
dialing
to.
our new room in, but
You need to, because you could really, that's another revenue generator if you
yeah,
have a
we
really
want
nice
to.
studio.
We want to. Maybe we'll call you for some training.
Hey, I'm available. I'm in Pittsburgh, so I drive
Sweet.
out to Charleston. I have wrestled there back in the days when I was a professional wrestler. So
Oh, yeah,
definitely we
you
need to
did
stay
that.
in touch.
Very nice.
Yeah, so I ended up all the way to Bremen, Germany, traveled half the United States, and didn't make it to the big time. Wrestled once for WWE, but ultimately I'm glad I didn't because I retired young, left, became a teacher, then got back in the entertainment business, and now I'm doing what I
All right.
love, but it's really the really an important thing is people can't create content. This is why, Jack, you say you jump on a Zoom. Well, this
Yeah.
could be all your stuff talking about specifically the band and things like that and putting out in reels and shorts. People are the organic reach for video content is through the roof right now. And it's like rolling the dice. You roll them, you see, some got 20 views, another one get 2,000 views. And that
Right, right,
is,
right.
and you got to just keep producing content. It's
Yeah.
like, and I see that people are busy people. The best way is through podcasting because they can really tell stories. They can come up with different things. And no, I'd be very intriguing. But in studio stuff, man, hey, if you come up with a deal and I could shoot down there sometimes, I could get a bunch of good video content out there and help you
Sure.
guys out and
We can
see.
do
Because
it.
like I'm in conversations with another studio in the Boston region. I just got to catch back up to that. It's just like craziness. Everything is in. This is probably the most crazy 2 week period to this election that we've ever seen in
Oh
our
yeah.
entire
Yeah.
lives of what's going to happen next. Meaning, with
No one knows.
businesses are taking a
Yeah.
stop. It feels like we're almost to January 1st, and we're not.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
earlier stopgap. So
Yeah.
hopefully normalcy comes back in November.
I
Normalcy
hope
in
so.
November. That's what I hope. And we just kind of
Yeah.
unite. So what do you think for your fans of Novo Combo back in the 80s?
Mhm.
Because that's going to be a big part of people are going to purchase the album, people that have been exposed to the music. How
Exactly.
much
Yeah.
of are you keeping the new music versus, old music versus new now with this release?
Well, half the record's new music. It's stuff that we made recently, but half of it's also stuff that we recorded back then, and nobody ever heard it, and it was good music, and we decided we needed to get it out there for people to hear it, you know. And are you familiar with Pete Hewlett there in Pittsburgh?
No, I'm not. I never met Pete before. No.
Oh, Pete's a Pittsburgh boy. Everybody there knows him, and he still works around town quite a lot.
Well, I definitely have to connect. You can just email me at Neil Haley,
He spent he spent the last
neilhaley@neilhaley.com.
he spent the last 8 years singing backup for Billy Joel and
Oh,
touring with Billy
wow.
Joel.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
and of
That's
course
cool.
our drummers, Michael Shreve, the original drummer from Santana, and he's not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was hoping to get an interview with him at one point in time, but I know he's not doing interviews right now. That's what I
well,
was.
he will be soon. He will be soon.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, we definitely stay in touch. I love talking music, but I think the mixture of music and where we're going, because ultimately at the end of the day, music will never die. It continues
Right,
to grow. You
right.
look at the way records are going now and all these different things. And now I was talking to a musician that just does like stuff in Chicago. This one musician, he told me, he said, dude, that live music is so hot now. And to be a band is a good thing, even for unknown bands,
Right,
because
right.
people want them to perform. Live music's back.
Exactly. There's a real difference in live music and, you know, can produced music or
Right.
computer produced
And then,
music.
but like if you have parties, you have something, everyone wants to have a live band in some sort of way. So it's not the day say, hey, I'm going to go. So it's good news for you guys and continue. Are you going to be doing any touring?
I don't know. We may. It's kind of up in the air. We'll just see how the record goes first, you know.
All right. So best place to go is go to Novo Combo's website. Is that correct?
Novocombo.com. Yeah, check us out.
I'm going to go ahead and find those certain songs. Love to have you back on. I think I have you. I don't. When we stay off air, I'm going to get your email and stuff and have you back on to talk more. It's you guys because you were. This is the thing. That Novo Combo, for having the run that they did, it was so short, should have more out there when it comes to their history, because you did
Right.
hit in the 80s, but
Yeah, we had the hits.
now you're
Check us
back.
out, man. Check us out on YouTube. There's a lot of product on YouTube.
Okay, sounds
A
good.
lot of songs, yeah.
All right, Jack, I appreciate it, sir.
Bethel Park Volunteer Fire Company would like to remind you that your tax dollars pay for our buildings, but it's your donations that pay for all of our firefighting equipment and everything else inside. Without your support, the Brightwood Fire Station will just be an empty building. Please support Bethel Park Volunteer Fire Company and donate today.
I'm so excited about my guests from NBC's Found. You know, when I think about specifically enough, our guests Mark Paul Gosselaar and Shanola Hampton joined the show. Guys, thanks for stopping by, and how are you today?
Thank you. So great.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so
Doing
let's
pretty good,
Shanola,
thanks.
you tell us about your character first. And I know it's the second season coming up. I got to go catch up on Peacock in the first season because this sounds like a really interesting show.
Yeah, you have to catch up on Peacock, and we already premiered 3 weeks ago. So we're 3 episodes into the second season, which we're really excited about. I played Gabby Mosley, who is a PR specialist looking for people in underserved communities. My character was kidnapped as a child. She had to save herself, and she vowed to never let that be the case for anyone else because no one came to look for her and there was no media coverage. But there's a twist. At the end of the very first episode, you realize that Gabby Mosley kidnapped her kidnapper, played by the some say handsome Mark Paul.
Huh. So Mark Paul, tell us about your character.
Well, sometimes I'm handsome, sometimes I'm not. It just depends on the lighting of the episode. But yeah, I played her sometimes handsome kidnapper. It's just my story is less about the procedural and more about her backstory and this connection that they've had for over 20 years and continue to try to have currently.
All right. So I heard so many people, I saw the numbers and it's unbelievable. And both of you guys can chime in on this about how many people are missing every year. It's scary, isn't it? After you start thinking about it, to know how many people aren't found. What are your thoughts?
It is a number that most people wouldn't even imagine. And what's crazy about it is you don't get to hear about it. And that's what our show is trying to do, is trying to bridge the gap between those who we hear about and those whom we don't. And it's been nice and rewarding to see people start those conversations.
And I think, Mark Paul, that those conversations have to be talked about, especially with child trafficking and all these different things happening right upon us, and the news doesn't cover it. We need to be the sources to bring up these things that happen, especially to children.
Yeah, agreed. For me, with a family of 4 children, it sort of hits home whenever we have stories, and we've had quite a few on our show. They hit home for me, and how sensitive it is and how important it is that we get the word out there.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I have 6 kids, so I'm beating you, Mark, by 2 more. So there you
Jeez,
go. Yeah,
my
God
goodness,
bless
what,
you.
good for you, man. I love it. How old's your oldest and your youngest?
My oldest is 19. My youngest is 5. So I'm a busy person for sure.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
definitely.
Oh man, that's awesome.
So just Mark Paul, I tell you, I'm such a huge fan back in the day of Saved by the Bell. So this is like just bringing back memories beyond belief of my childhood watching it. So for sure. So it's great.
I appreciate you.
Yeah,
Thanks for watching.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, what do you think what is your ultimate goal, Shanola, when you look at your character and the show? What do you want this to happen from this?
Another season?
Yeah, another season first, but what about like the overall theme and everything?
Just kidding. No, I'm joking. No, what I really want and what you'll see when you watch the show or when you go back is that everyone in the M&A, the Mosley and Associates, which is where my character works, has built a community of people who all suffered some sort of trauma and what the healing process is. And what I hope to gain by the end of this season is people stopping the judgment on when and what that time frame for healing is. I'd like for them to be able to go through and realize that it looks differently for everyone. And one of the core things that I learned even from shooting this episode is a person is not defined by their biggest mistake. And if we could kind of go through all of that and still entertain at the same time, then I'll be very satisfied.
Mark Paul, same question.
I want a second season, third season. Sorry, I want a third season, and I'm not joking. Let's continue this for as long as we possibly can. I'm really enjoying being on this show, working with these the cast and crew, and creating some really fascinating television that I think is super important to be out there.
All right, everyone needs to catch up on the Peacock app and check it out. I subscribe to Peacock, love it. Check out season 2 on Thursdays on NBC at 10 p.m. Eastern, and catch up on Peacock for season 1. Appreciate it, guys, and thanks for stopping by.
This is our 90 plus club. Anyone that lives in Bethel Park that is 90 years or older joins our club, and we send them birthday card, Christmas cards, and we have this luncheon at the beginning of October every year. So it started 20 years ago. It grew from about 30 people to what you see today, which is about 100 people. So it's a great thing that we do, that Bethel does. If you know anybody that's 90 plus, or if you're 90 plus, please call Janet Davin, 412-831-6800, extension 211, and get on her list. And you can be here next year enjoying lunch with our fellow 90 plus.
Robert Davi. He's going to talk about Reagan, now available everywhere. How are you, Robert? Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you for having me, Neil. And I think I'm okay.
Yeah, no. So the thing that's really cool, Robert, is that ultimately your fans of as an actor has gone, your tribe of people that love you. And then finally you get a project like Reagan, because you've talked politics before on this show, especially even to kind of bring up how important it is. And now Reagan, what a perfect time for this movie to come out. What a perfect time to talk about almost the same situation that we were in the Carter administration leading up to this election.
Yeah, it's prophetic. There's so many interesting parallels to what happened. And I remember the Reagan era very well. And I remember the discontent and the slurs that they left put on Reagan back then. And now I can talk to some of these same lefties who are voting for Kamala Harris. And they say, well, we voted for Reagan and we love Reagan. I said, but don't you understand there's the same thing happening right now, even the assassination attempt? And I think it's a fitting time for the film to come out, but also the danger that we see in our country today is frightening. And, the last thing Reagan said when he left office, Neil, and he said it was the most important, and I wrote about this on Breitbart. For those of you that don't know, I've written for Breitbart since 2009. The day Trump announced, I said he was going to win. And when Trump won in 2016, my article on Breitbart was Reagan's final farewell to the American people, and how we were going to lose our Constitution and our democracy and our nation because of lack of education, lack of patriotism, what it means to be an American, not what it means to be a progressive left-wing Marxist communist, not to fundamentally transform America as Obama did and the left continues to do, but to his last message to the American people were the importance of talking about politics at the dinner table and in education, or we're going to lose our country. And that's what we find ourselves today. We have the most ignorant population that I could ever remember. And Reagan, and it's in our film, fought communism. Reagan fought the progressive left since the 1940s in Hollywood. And, but I'm digressing because that's my nature, but I think if you haven't seen the film Reagan, I know people that have seen it have been emotionally involved in the film and very moved by it, because it's an America that we've let like sand grasp through our fingers.
Right. So tell me about your character in Reagan.
Well, in Reagan, I played Leonid Brezhnev, head of Soviet Union during Carter years. So Brezhnev was the longest Russian leader that they've had. Very interesting character. It's a little cameo of a part, but the interesting thing that I did when I did my research, and we have great, Dennis Quaid is playing Ronald Reagan. John Voight plays a Russian operative who's actually takes you through the events in Reagan's life from their intelligence on him. And Penelope Ann Miller plays, of course, Nancy Reagan beautifully. And but Brezhnev was a guy that, and Hollywood Reporter reported that I was going to play Brezhnev in 2015. And I sing. I don't know if many people know that I sing, but I sing. My album went to #6 on Billboard Jazz. And I traveled the world, and I was in Estonia, Latvia, Sweden, Lithuania, many countries around the Baltics. And I was researching, I was asking people about Brezhnev. Now, Brezhnev gave a certain kind of posterity to the Soviet Union at the time. He was also very good friends with Nixon. This is not in the film, but this is me, because even when I do a part, if it's small, I want to be able to, I invest in that character as if it's the lead of the film, to play a portrait of him. And Brezhnev wanted détente. He wanted a partner in America. Him and Nixon were very good friends. Nixon gave Brezhnev a Lincoln Continental as a gift in the beginning of the 70s, 1970s. And Brezhnev took him for a ride. This is not in the film, but this is in my history of Brezhnev. And when I was watching the research on Brezhnev, the speeches he gave in San Clemente, California, a speech with Nixon. And in that speech, I waited till the very end. We would turn it off because the speech was over, the two of them, their interviews. And I said, I wonder if Reagan, who was governor of California, was in San Clemente. And all of a sudden, Reagan shows up with Nancy, the first people to meet Brezhnev. Now, that was important to me because in this initial script, they had that Brezhnev underestimated Reagan, blew him off as some actor, some lightweight. But that wasn't the case because Brezhnev, being the leader of the Soviet Union, being part of that intelligence apparatus for many years, understood that Reagan was fighting communism since the 40s in America and understood he would be a credible threat. And then they changed that aspect for me. And the film is, again, it's an ode to America, an ode to a president who had a wonderful peace through strengths, not peace through joy. And so and Brezhnev wanted détente, but there was no partner in Jimmy Carter. This is the left, the military-industrial complex, of course. There was no partner. And then by the time he was able to, Reagan took office, Brezhnev was hooked on drugs and hooked on alcohol from pain and other things, and then he died.
Yeah.
And he never got to really do the détente that then later on Gorbachev and Reagan worked out.
Wow. There's definitely more to definitely cover, and I'm looking forward to have a longer interview. Now, I think that when you talk about Reagan in so many ways, people need to just be re-educated to specifically what he was able to do in the country and be able to tell that story. What were the filmmakers thinking by putting out this film at this point in time? What, especially because do you think Reagan's become forgotten and it was a perfect time for the film to come out?
Well, it's curious because the film was supposed to come out way before. And of course, the director, who's a terrific director, he directed some other films, The Miracle Season and Soul Searcher. Sean McNamara, he has a film out now that's terrific about the Holocaust, of which I also did a Holocaust film that we'll talk about another time, perhaps, that's out right now. And the producers, I think, wanted this to come out sooner, but it just didn't happen. And I think it was almost divine intervention in a certain way, because everyone expected Reagan to come out and make a $5 million box office. Well, it made double that. It was number one for a couple of weeks and did tremendously. It overperformed. And the left-wing critics, of course, didn't give us a lot of love, but the people loved the film. The Rotten Tomato rankings are like 98. They're very high. And people that see the film are very moved by this picture. And I think the timing is wonderful because, well, wonderful. Don't forget the assassination attempt on Donald Trump happened just prior to it coming out.
Yeah, perfect timing for sure. Now it's available. People can check it out.
Streaming
Digitally,
services, it's Blu-ray and DVD and digital. November 15th, November 19th, it have some 19th it comes out. It's video on demand November 1st, 2024, and digital download right now, October 15th. You can get that as a digital download. I also have 2 songs in the film because I said I sing. I sing when Nancy and Ronald Reagan meet. I sing the song Nancy with the Laughing Face, which then takes us to Vegas in the late 50s, and I sing This Town. So, as well as Bob Dylan has some songs in it and other people.
Awesome. We appreciate it, Robert. Best place people can follow you. Where can they go?
They can go on Instagram at Robert Davi and on X at Robert John Davi. And it's not for the faint of heart because I am very outspoken and in terms of a independent conservative. I want Trump Vance to win. And being in Hollywood for 46 years, Sinatra brought me to Hollywood in 1977. I did my first film with Sinatra. And I've worked with many, many people, many stars. And the overriding aspect of Hollywood being left wing is a stunning indictment, which we could talk about.
Absolutely, another time. And hopefully produce a podcast for you maybe as well.
I would love to.
Appreciate it.
All of the produce you see here is distributed at our 3 food pantries every other week on Tuesday at Baldwin Presbyterian Church and every other week on Wednesdays at the Wallace Building in Whitehall and every other Thursday here at the Shim location. The food pantry schedule is on our website and we look forward to seeing you.
Excited to welcome the host of the Dr. Robert Marks Show, Dr. Marks. Dr. Marks, how are you? I know you're excited about our guest today.
Yes, he has a great set of topics. He has been a New York Times bestseller, and that's what I want to ask him about.
All right.
Fire away.
All right.
Tom, your last New York Times bestseller, I believe, was Throne of Grace, but you have a new book coming out, Bandit Heaven. Can you give our listeners an overview of what's in that book?
Well, I'll first explain the title. Bandit Heaven was a nickname given to 3 different locations along the so-called Outlaw Trail. There was Browns Hole. There was this is all throughout the Colorado, Utah, and Mexico. The Outlaw Trail really extended from the Canadian border to the Mexican border. These outlaws could ride this trail and stop off at the Hole in the Wall in Wyoming. They could stop off at Robber's Roost. They could stop off at Browns Hole. Each of these places were very hard to access, especially for lawmen, especially. 2 of them were very remote places. So they offered safety. You had a bunch of bandits might have just robbed a train. They made their way to one of these sanctuaries, and they could be protected there by other bandits. And it was hard to access them, so the lawmen usually said, well, it's too risky, I won't go there. So Bandit Heaven is the name that was given to these 3 safe havens, because it was a place that they could sit back and relax and basically plan their next job.
And Tom, we've talked. Go ahead, Dr. Marks. I was going to get a question.
No,
Tom and I have talked multiple times on my program, and Westerns are the way you go, right? And you continue to write them. And do you see there's such a popularity with this? For sure.
You know, it's a very interesting thing that's happening right now in American culture because Western books, both fiction and nonfiction, are quite popular. The Western Writers of America is a very active organization, and their people are getting their books published. I've been very fortunate that my books get published and they often end up on bestsellers. People are buying my books because they enjoy the topics and I guess they enjoy the writing. It's quite different now. Suddenly it's rather quite different as far as Westerns on screen. You could say, well, what about Yellowstone? But Yellowstone is 4 or 5 years old now and is also not a period Western, meaning it takes place in contemporary times. You're hard to find either feature films or television shows, in which case in Western times taking place in the 1880s and 1890s. And that could be, it looked like that might have been changing. In fact, I was working on an adaptation for screen adaptation of my book Dodge City, but then Kevin Costner's movie Horizon came out, and that did so poorly at the box office. I've seen the movie; I think it's a good movie, but it did so poorly at the box office that a lot of screen people are saying, "Don't go near Westerns." So Western books popular, Western movies and TV series unpopular.
And that again, the probably one platform would be really good. We work with them on a regular basis is INSP. That really is given a big hub for original programming that are
Right.
Westerns. And I guess that you have a niche audience, not a broad audience. For some reason, books, we have a broad audience for
Mhm.
Westerns.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I think one of the Bandit Heaven, some of the advanced reviews for Bandit Heaven that I saw on different sites were written by women, which is interesting because I really made a specific effort with Bandit Heaven to include female characters because there were female characters. They often get excluded from stories because they're not the main cat. They're not Wyatt Earp. They're not Bat Masterson. But in Bandit Heaven, for every Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid and Kid Curry and Tall Texan Kilpatrick, there's a woman that was involved with them directly or was part of their gang, or actually in the case of like Etta Place, who became eventually Mrs. Sundance, actually participated in some of their robberies.
Okay. Good, Dr. Marks.
How does a kid from Brooklyn like yourself get interested and dig out details about the Wild West between roughly 1880 and 1900?
Well, I think I'm of an age where, as a kid, you could turn on the television, you could find shows like Bonanza and The Big Valley and Rawhide and shows like that. And also, it was not unusual to go see a double feature on a Saturday or a Sunday, and you're seeing a couple of Westerns. They could be starring Cornell Wilde, Audie Murphy, Richard Widmark, Henry Fonda, James Stewart. They were still doing Westerns. The very young Clint Eastwood was doing the spaghetti Westerns. So I had a very keen interest in the Western genre from early on. That didn't guarantee I was going to be able to write about it. What really changed was, I guess I could say Dodge City. That was supposed to be a one-off. I wanted to do a story about Wyatt Earp and Bat Masterson when they were close friends in their 20s and trying to tame the town that was called the wickedest town in the American West. And when the book came out, I was already embarked on a different book on a totally different subject, but the book was so successful and continues to be that my publisher said, can we keep doing more about the American West? You seem to have tapped into a real audience for the Dodge City. Can we keep it going? And that's where we ended up with Wild Bill, Tombstone, Follow Me to Hell, The Last Outlaws, and now Bandit Heaven.
Go ahead, Dr. Marks.
Interesting. What piqued my interest is how do you research this? How do you get out all this nitty gritty detail that is the heart and soul of making your books really great?
I think one reason is because I like to go back to the original contemporary sources. What was being written about these people and these events at the time. When Butch Cassidy and his gang robbed the train, the Wilcox train, it was called, in Wilcox, Wyoming. That was a big news. And so the newspapers for hundreds of miles around were covering that story and interviewing the conductor and interviewing the firemen of the train. So you get a lot of details from just what was written about at the time these events are taking place. And I think another part of it is persistence. If I might come across a character in a book that I'm writing about because he helped rob a train with some other gang member who I'm writing about. And you might just mention him once, mention him twice. But what I'll do is I'll pause a moment and say, let me see if this guy's got a backstory or something interesting happened to him or will happen to him. So I'll look it up. And sometimes it'll come out to be an interesting story on its own right. Sometimes it'll be a footnote. George Big Beak Parrott, I think, is a good example of that. I mean, he's an outlaw who eventually justice was done, you can say, and he ended up as a pair of shoes. So That's the kind of detail I never found anyplace else, but I did some extra research on it, that this man ended up as a pair of shoes.
So
Do
you'll
you
continue to be writing Westerns, it sounds like, Tom.
Well, I'd like to. I mean, I do enjoy the genre. It's not the only genre I enjoy. The book I'm working on right now is about a World War II submarine, which is kind of refreshing to switch gears sometimes and write about something different, then come back to the West. But I have a couple other ideas to work on, and I do enjoy them. And what's most important is that I get such good feedback from people. When I go on the road, when I give talks, people are coming up and saying, "I so enjoyed your book. Or I can't wait for your next one. Or I read your 2 books ago." And if people are coming up to me and saying, "Stop writing Westerns, we don't like them," I'll stop.
Nobody has said that yet, have they?
Not to my face.
Now, Throne of Grace was your previous book last year, and it became a New York Times bestseller. Is that correct?
That's with Bob Drury. That was about Jedediah Smith, the great explorer and mountain man.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, what era was that in? That was not below that was before 1880s, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, it was mostly takes place in the 1820s because Jedediah Smith makes his first appearance in 1822 in St. Louis. And pretty much when he dies in 1831, that's pretty much the end of the story. So it's mostly that decade of the 1820s when the mountain men there were tons of beaver to catch, and that's what they were after in the American West.
Yeah.
All
You
right,
ever
well,
write a book about Jim Bridger?
Not specifically about him. There's a book coming out soon by a fellow named Bill Markley on Jim Bridger. I'm sure it's going to be a good one. But Jim Bridger is a very prominent character in another book I did with Bob Drury called The Heart of Everything That Is, about the Sioux Indian leader Red Cloud.
Oh.
Jim Bridger was a scout for the Army that encountered Red Cloud and his forces in the mid to late 1860s in what was called Red Cloud's War. So we have and he's also mentioned a few times in Throne of Grace too, because he was one of the very young mountain men of that period.
Okay. Well, this is very, very intriguing stuff so far that we're talking about. What do you think? What do you want your readers to get most out of your latest book?
Fun. I mean that seriously, because I think if a book's not fun to read, I don't want people to read the book saying, "Well, I got to keep reading this. I'm not enjoying it. I got to keep reading it because it's well researched." Well, I'm glad you think it's well researched, and that's a very important part of what I do. But don't feel like you have to read it because it's got a lot of details. It's something you want to read. There's a lot of stories in Banded Heaven, and I think compared to my other books, I might have more action than my other books because there was so much happening in the 1890s in the American West that people don't know about. So if it's fun, if you want to keep turning the pages, read the book, but don't force yourself to do it if it's just not fun.
Okay. Last
Tom?
question, Dr. Marks. What do you have?
Oh, yeah, Tom. You say you kind of have appearances, and I see there's a couple in Kansas coming up. Do you have any more coming up in other areas other than the Midwest?
Nothing scheduled right now. I do have next Monday, I'll be in St. Louis. Next Tuesday, I'll be in Wichita. And next Wednesday, I'll be in Kansas City. Haven't added anything onto it. It's kind of hard. The days of the long book tours are over. Publishers don't want to underwrite them. And a lot of times, you can show up someplace and there's only like 4 people waiting for you. So they become a lot more conservative in book tours. That's fine with me because I used to go on book tours that could be 2 weeks long and you have 12 different engagements in 2 weeks. It's rather exhausting. I'm not a spring chicken anymore. So 3 or 4 gigs in a week is enjoyable because I meet people, but that's plenty for me.
That's
Right.
interesting. What do you think the reason for those changes? Now, you said they don't want to underwrite them or it's not really profitable for the publisher.
There's so much more dependence now on online advertising and online publicity. There's so many people, especially because of the pandemic, they found that you don't have to send an author on the road if you could do these virtual appearances by Zoom. So a lot of authors are saying, I don't feel like living out of a suitcase for 10 days. Set me up with a bunch of Zoom things. I like doing some personal appearances because you get to see people, shake their hands, personally inscribe their books and sign their books. But I'm happy not having to be on the road for 2 weeks.
All right. Where's the best place people can buy your book? Is Amazon? Do you have a website as well, Tom?
Yes, Tom Clavin, TomClavin, TomClavin.com.
All right, Tom, we appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Good to see
All
you.
right. That was a special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and the Dr. Robert Marks Show. Guys, take care.